And so we did get Sammy. Um, and a Polish friend of mine, when we were working at North American Rockwell, taught me a whole lot of Polish nice things to say and a few
Mhm.
Polish cuss words. I forgot the cuss words, but I do remember the nice words. And one time I was in Montana uh, at a windmill conference, and I was invited to. Morning, Sam. I was invited to show my windmill on the television set. So
Mhm.
they filmed me on the TV, and so when I got on the plane to come home the next morning, everybody in the plane started clapping. And
Mhm.
I thought, what are you clapping about? I looked around, I didn't see anything special, and they said, "We saw you on TV." And so I bowed, and then I sat down to next to this lady, and I said, "Where are you from?" And she says, "Poland." And I said,
Mhm.
"Dzień dobry." And she just started crying. It was just, it was like nobody ever spoke Polish to her. So it was a lot of fun. I really liked the ability to have some kind of a greeting in a different language.
Yes, it's hospitality.
It really is. Sammy, you got up today.
I think it's now been a couple of weeks since the time change. Plus, I'm no longer staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, that's that.
How
There
come?
must be a reason. Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Let's see. Why was it? Well, I think I mentioned to you why I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning a few nights, and that is I'm really, really, yeah. In fact, you and I did speak about this, Jack. I'm really trying to understand the futures market.
Understand what?
The futures market.
Oh, the futures market. Oh, yes, commodities.
Well, not yet the commodities. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm just looking at NASDAQ futures right now. So
Oh,
anyway,
NASDAQ
Heiner,
futures. Yeah,
just
okay.
American marketplace, futures contracts, basically gambling.
Well, so they don't call it gambling. They say it's helping to promote liquidity.
That's right. It
They
flows
have all
from
these.
individuals into big pockets. That's the flow of liquidity.
I actually built a trading program once that on paper it made me a shitload of money in corn and beans, as I recall. Um, that was historical data, and back in those days, I had 20 or 30 years of historical data, and but to trade in commodities, you have to have a lot of money.
That's right.
Now, stock futures, I don't know anything about it. That came along much later, and I don't know about it, but so I don't follow it. Um, I am interested in these things called ETFs, exchange traded funds, and I think my daughter said she's now in an ETF. Um, guys, I want to read you a headline from Wall Street Journal. Wall Street. I used to be able to open Wall Street Journal documents with uh, archive.ph. But now when I do Wall Street Journal, it comes back and says You have to turn on your JavaScript and turn off your
Blocking.
blockers, and it doesn't do that for any other thing. You know, I can even see ft.com with archive.ph, but suddenly Wall Street Journal has apparently figured out that when they're being attacked by by archive, they block it. But I want to read you this headline. You're going to find it fairly surprising. It says he's been right about AI for 40 years now. He thinks everyone is wrong. Jan LeCun invented many fundamental components of modern AI. Now he's convinced most of in his field have been led astray by the siren song of large language models. That to me says it all.
Hmm.
And then there's Gary Marcus, the emeritus cognitive scientist, who's been saying it's all a bit, it's all a bunch of bullshit. Nobody denies that LLMs for really, really, really narrow, highly pre-trained fields do some pretty marvelous stuff. But the idea that they're going to make AGI or artificial superintelligence, none of us believe that, and especially now, LeCun. So he's leaving Facebook and starting doing his own startup to do world models. We don't have any idea what those world models will be, but they won't be LLMs.
I think they're going to incorporate LLMs, but they're not going to be
Oh,
foundationally.
we all, I just gave my talk to West Point yesterday, and I said the place for LLMs in decision making platforms is not their domain knowledge, but in their lexical chops. They are very, very, very good at spotting noun phrases and verb phrases and pulling out frame-based structures. Pass them a JSON schema and they'll pull it out if it's there, and they won't if it isn't. But they are also given this thing called GraphRag. They are extremely good at connecting a chatbot to a powerful backside, and that's where I'm going. So LLMs live in the universe. I am using them for machine reading, and I will eventually use them for the chatbot to talk to the system, but I will not use them for their domain knowledge, and that was the point that I made.
Far out, really far out. I would like to tell you that I do 4 futures now since 7 years, and I'm back in the old age. So you see, I'm
Yeah.
using the real audio stuff. No, I really enjoy, and I feel like you, Jack, um, that if it's domain specific and it is just in one multimodal mode, so how can it be creatively connecting overarchingly? And so I'm with Jerome Glenn since the early 90s and Paul Werbos, and we had these discussions many times. I think there's a lot of hype when you try to um, garbage in, garbage out, try to hope something that it will finally come. No, it will not come if you just hope, and the data and the context are not there. So, anyway, I'm not an expert, but I really like it and I enjoy talking to you.
Well, so I've spoken a lot with Paul Verbos, and his dissertation was on backprops. So he's one of the pioneers.
Yes.
Um, but I do kind of worry that he gives the appearance that he's pushing LLMs these days. He's certainly pushing AGI. And if AGI to him is not LLMs, then he and I are on the same page. Um, but it AGI to me is got to be hybrid computing, society of agents, lots of
Yeah.
different ways of thinking about the problem.
Mhm. Where you think, see, I know since the early 90s, Paul and Jerry, and I see Paul very much in many other fields like
Yes.
Dersh and spirituality and Jung and many other fields. And whatever he did in the Senate as a clerk or for NAS, NRC, or wherever, um, is something like a side effect. And just funding it and having a smart nose does not really tell me that this forecasting and backcasting is already solved.
Well, he does make a lot of trips to China, and he's got a lot of connections there. Uh, and I don't know how he keeps getting to go there, but he's going there now. Um, and he in on Jerry's list, he drops, his slides. These are what I'm taking to China with me, blah, blah, blah. Um, but uh, I just find him interesting.
I find him funny. No, no.
There is that, yes.
You see, I looked also through some Chinese heritage in the conceptualization of of something I cannot even talk about because I don't speak Chinese and I'm not them. But I learned the modern Chinese approaches are more detailed and overview and not a tunnel of reasoning, but really checking the context, the domain, and being in that way much more interactive between knowledge domains for me in the subject areas, in the scale areas, and in the time areas, and in the terminology areas, besides the geolocation in 3D, that I think this is a much better approach. And from what I learned through my channels, it needs much less energy because this tunnel uh, computing without a chance to stop and go back, but being hooked in the tunnel is, I think, a dead approach being funded by Paul Werbers.
Well, I don't know. He and I have you know we've been on a number of email lists and chatted over the years. Um, I just think that we need. I'm guessing Sammy's off making his coffee.
No, I'm listening.
Um, the I'm just thinking that we really do need to build Inglebardian human augmentation tools, not human replacement tools. Side note to that, I was reading in I it may have been BBC.com news or The Guardian, I'm not sure which, but there was this photo of miles of electric cars in China that were not being sold. That they fundamentally overbuilt their infrastructure and they're dying.
What do you mean by dying?
Well, China, from what I've read, China seeds the government seeds a lot of experimentation. It's Darwin at work. They seed a whole lot of startups and push them like hell. And some of them make it, and some of them don't. And that's China's industrial game is to just push the living shit out of these little startups. And they ended up with a flood of startups all making electric cars. And and I've read drivers' reports on some of them, and they're basically tin cans. They're junk. But others are as good as Teslas and sometimes better. But the problem is that the economy in China is under pressure, and people are not buying these cars.
Right. But a huge part of the strategy has always been to export. And I think part of the problem now is with tariffs, they can't export as
Yes.
many to the US as they thought they could.
Well, they I don't know that they can export any.
Well, this whole thing will blow over soon. They're just going to be
It
sitting in
will.
inventory for a while.
It will. But if anybody but Tesla would come along with a reasonably priced EV that had 500 miles range, I'd be interested in looking at it. But I definitely don't want a Tesla.
Well, even gas cars don't have 500-mile range, though.
No, actually, they don't. But my Prius has a 420-mile range. I'm sorry, that's correct. Incorrect. It has a 520-mile range.
But the Prius is a hybrid, right? It's not pure
It's a
EV.
hybrid, yes.
Right?
And the point is that I can go all the way to Las Vegas and halfway back.
That's the
And
key, having the
that's
infrastructure so that you're not stranded someplace.
well, yeah. Now we do know when you go to Vegas from where I live, there is a Tesla superstation that must have 50 or 60 plug-ins stations. And most electric vehicles today honor the Tesla cable. So there's always a charging station. But if you actually look at the cost of ownership of an EV, when you compare it where you charge it at a plug-in at a charging station versus charging it at home, it's much cheaper if you charge it at home.
Natural to think that, yes.
Somebody's making a profit on your electricity.
And they have to.
Well, it wouldn't work otherwise.
If you believe in
Um,
capitalism, then yes.
of course. Um, and the only way here in the States to charge an EV is overnight when the electricity rates drop. If you try to charge it during the day, you're paying through the nose. But if you charge it overnight, it's much lower.
Have you looked into the electricity bill in Germany? I
Uh,
mean,
I'm imagining it's pretty high.
they just give a industry special tariff with a new law, but it's not still through Parliament in Congress and implemented. But for the rest, it's a nightmare. I mean,
But
how production industries, how people who need energy, they can all only go to somewhere else.
but
It's
Heiner, there's fantastic publicity about how Germany has adopted solar and other non-oil based energy sources. Is that all just marketing, or has that been true?
marginalized. Well, the real expert for that would be Jörg Altekruse. I'm in day and night shifts with him because he is in Belém, and I told him last minute, no, I'm not going. So he's really we cannot call him now, but he would be the right person who is really looking into alternative energy sectors, and he has a big favor for wind, and I have more for waves and also deep geoelectricity and energy
Geothermal?
in geothermal.
Mhm.
So that was my thing since 87, because we really believe we could do something like that with our KTB deep drilling projects we had with our geoscience companies, following Iceland and other countries. But I think what you read in the news is very much noise. Uh, we should really see how the deals making is presently moving. I think they have the halftime party presently in Belém at the COP, and maybe we have a session in 2 weeks.
When I rode the train from the airport, uh, uh, the Flugzeughafen in Leipzig into town,
Hmm.
um, I passed a lot of windmills.
Oh, yeah. But most are not online. We have
Uh,
so many windmills all over Germany, but didn't get the line to Bavaria's
oh,
and
that sucks.
Baden-Württemberg running. So they are idle.
When I went into um, when I went in, what's the big city in Holland?
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam,
Yeah,
Rotterdam.
well, I went into Amsterdam for a meeting at Elsevier, and there was a bunch of windmills right in town.
Hmm.
They take it seriously.
Well, the Dutch people do it, but also the people in Denmark. They
The
started
Denmarks do it
for
as
us.
well. Yes.
Yes, very much.
Heiner, I do agree with you. I think wave, I mean, I don't know anything about these things, but just looking at it from a macro scale, wave seems to be everywhere, and it seems to be easier to harvest that kind of energy rather than digging very deep wells or all of the infrastructure required to build those windmills and get it the right proper height, reliability, and then, as you say, string all the cables so that you can actually transfer that energy. But wave, you can do it pretty much anywhere, right? So why is that not the most promising?
Well, I was with a guy, he's an Australian, and we pushed it in the early 90s for our Global Change exhibition. And he just got so many people who screwed him. He didn't get the lobby, And so any kind of tidal waves or stream waves like Ebbe and Flut, or especially waves, is for me also something I really have it as a favorite.
Are you
So
saying
there's
that it's being fought by the incumbent energy companies?
Yes.
Okay, I understand that then. That's one of the wonders of capitalism.
isn't it? But there's a my sister once wrote to me and said, "What do you think of this?" And I went and looked, and it was a company that was building you know how you can have a pier that goes from the beach out into the ocean some distance.
Hmm?
Um, they would put on each side of that pier these floats that would go up and down and up
Yes.
and down and up and down, and they were harnessing electricity from that.
Yes, they have
Um,
it like an anchor in the seafloor, and then it's a lot of energy coming with the up and down of the waves.
yeah, so if you when you do the seafloor anchor kind, you have to have an electric cable that goes up to shore. Whereas if you're on a pier that's already onshore, you've got your power grid already on the pier.
Or just stick it into a
And
battery, right?
It's also an
it,
obstacle at the shore, and it depends if you have the tides or not. Uh, I think all is feasible and should be considered.
they all should be considered. Yeah. Now, so here's some things I learned. Wind power in Africa um, has the problem of sand, blowing sand. If you drive down roads in towns and in Africa, you'll find a Mercedes Benz, and you also see this in Saudi Arabia. You'll see a Mercedes Benz just parked by the road. It's dead.
Yeah,
The engine just died. It got eaten by the sand. So when I was in West Berlin in I believe it was 1980 at the DSE in West Berlin. It was a conference on wind and solar energy for semi-arid areas, and that's where it came up um, that you have to deal with the sand.
yeah. I lived 5 years, nearly 5 years in Arabia, so I can tell you it's the sand and the oil. My sheikh always said when the oil came, the water went. So I was just in Dubai 2 years ago, and we cannot really confront the uh, temperature differences and all the solar and whatever hindrances. I think we are building a very difficult competition between all the Mediterranean states and the Arab states. It's a nightmare for me. Not only regarding tourism, but energy, all sectors.
So Bucky Fuller said that what you need is a global grid, power grid. And you simply there are places in the earth where it's there's tons of natural energy and you harvest it, and if they don't need it there, you ship it to elsewhere where they need it. And it goes the cycle follows the sun.
Yeah,
And so that's what the world needs. But what that means is you can't have this concept of nation states and local armies to protect their sovereignty and all the rest of it. we have to become the one people that we were back in caveman days.
I don't
I
think
don't
we
know that
were the
that's
one people in caveman days, Jack.
well, we had our tribes, yes.
And we
We
were
did. We
living in our on our island or in our valley, and there were high ranges of mountains in between, making artificial boundaries.
And they weren't shipping batteries via UPS, to other continents.
well, at any rate,
Hey, Jack, but I do agree with you on a fundamental point, which is you put, like I've heard was somewhere like, 1 square mile or, 10 square miles in the Sahara, and you can collect enough energy to power, almost the entire world just on
that
that
is
much solar.
at that point we know that.
Yeah. So it's a matter of distribution, which is the point that you were talking about.
That is the issue.
And
Um,
transmission. It's also a transmission problem, not
the
just
the transmission issue is always there. Now, to get efficiency, if it's going to be electricity, you've got to run it up to very high voltage, and if you do that, then you've got all kinds of dangers to people and fallen power lines that have got 10,000 volts in them, and they electrocute half a town and so forth. These are all issues.
Okay,
And
so let
now
me
I
ask.
don't
Sorry.
go ahead.
Well, see, clearly I am not knowledgeable in this area, but wouldn't you tackle efficiency after you tackle other problems? Efficacy. And if you were to try and deliver power, why wouldn't we put huge batteries like the size of, 10 by 40 by 9 storage containers, make that entire batteries, because we know how to ship them by the millions all around the world. So if you could create a form factor for a battery, collect the energy somewhere in the Sahara or, wherever you want to find a nice desert, okay? And then just have a way to transport this wherever you need it, whether it's,
Okay, so you're saying a battery the size of a shipping container, and you'd have a boatload of those, and so you would have so many tens of thousands of gigawatt hours charged up in those batteries, and you'd put them on a boat and send them to somewhere else who would use them for a week and then send them back, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable idea, but um, batteries as we know them today are one of the primary issues in geopolitics.
Yeah, they are.
The the idea that who's got the most lithium, blah 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 blah. Now, in my own
Vanadium batteries, Jack.
whatever, it doesn't matter what you say. Somebody's got to mine it. Somebody has to process it. Somebody has to do, and that takes energy. And that has a carbon footprint. And I don't know what I kind of like is the idea of local high intensity energy sources of a variety of kinds, wind and solar and geothermal and wave and whatever. And I'm a big fan of using gravity as a battery. The idea that you could uh, winch up a very large mass from a deep cave while you have a lot surplus of energy, and then let it go down slowly, driving a generator to do what the chemical battery would do. Now, other people are favor of pumping air into caves and storing it there, but then what happens is it gets hot when you build it up to high pressure, and then the pressure boils off, because the heat in the air, whatever gas you're charging, dissipates through the cave walls, and so you lose some of the energy. I've when I wrote my wind power book years ago, I showed a picture of two telephone poles lifting a 1958 Oldsmobile, because an Oldsmobile was one of the heaviest cars on the planet at the time. And so you had this electric winch that would pull it up when you had sufficient wind power to do it, and then when you needed the charge, you just let it fall, and the motor became a generator. I've always kind of liked that idea.
Dissipation is a problem with all tech stacks.
Yes, of
I'm just
course.
not
There's friction, and yes, we know that.
I'm just not smart
What you
enough.
just said is there's no free lunch.
So evidently the problem is not necessarily with the technology. Technology problems can be solved even if, we don't have the solution yet. The problem is, as you pointed out earlier, the incumbents will kill any new innovation, just like, GE
Yeah,
killed the
yeah,
electric
yeah.
battery 40, 50, 60 years ago. Sorry, electric vehicle, EV, that long ago.
Mhm.
So long as you have pure, lust-driven capitalism, this will always be a problem. And by the
I
way,
I have
sorry,
a
go ahead.
problem. If there's no free lunch, how about supper? No,
Uh,
I'm kidding.
I only
Uh,
eat
yes,
one
of
meal a
course.
day, Heiner. I'm going to
So,
choose the free one, okay?
no,
yeah,
I
I'll choose the free
say
one.
something else. You see, we have this discussion in the Millennium Project with all these databases of solutions and collections. I don't know if you ever joined our Futures Day. I think we do it with Jerry now since 15 years. And we tried with SDD, structured dialogic design, to link the 20 problem areas or the 17 SDGs to go to the win-win deep drivers, root causes, blind spot issues, to really have not a discussion only on energy, but really see how it is connected in the deep. And that is actually my concern. And otherwise, you see, I was up nearly all night with our friends there from Belém. So actually, I've been going into night mode, but I can listen perfectly.
Well, just briefly, I don't think I've ever attended a live session with you and Jerry, but I have attended one or two of the annual report sessions back when he and his group used to report on those at Ames Research Center at Moffett Field in the Bay Area. So
Yeah.
I attended a couple of those.
Well, you see, I met him in '93, and he calls me a purple futurist, but I don't know what that is. But you see, I really tried to introduce him to all these futures gurus. And I'm not really in that maze, but I go annually, and we have various nodes of the Millennium Project we established here in Europe. And there is a very interesting lady running the Italian node and helping him now with the general management. I think we should really go discussing such issues, if you are interested, onto the level of really integrating the problem areas of the global problematic and really see how we are not barking up the wrong tree, but have the view of the woods, not just the trees.
May I respond to that, Heiner?
On
May I respond to that?
you may everything, and I listen until I sleep.
So, about 5 or 10 years ago, I would have jumped at that invitation because, oh, it's important and you get to, work with a bunch of smart people. And then, somewhere around a decade ago, I found that many smart people were getting together and some were just leaving frustrated.
Yeah.
So that's the short form of why I turn my interest not towards large scale collaboration, but towards understanding why it doesn't work. Why do smart people not manage to stick together and collaborate effectively? Very, very few such smart protons come together and fuse. They mostly just bounce apart, you know? Now, it might be a variation in how long they're within each other's proximity before they bounce, but they seem to bounce. So I'm really
I'm
interested in that
fully with
phenomenon.
you. I also don't have the patience anymore, or maybe I never had it. But I have a favorite author, is Stanislav Lem, and from Poland, and he wrote this futuristic novel on the Futures Congress. Maybe you have it in English. It is really worth a read.
The only work of his I know of is Solaris, but not the Congress work.
Yes, try to find out if it's available in English. Der Futurologische Kongress. That is the original title in German.
Okay. Did I hear hologische? Like holography?
Futurologische Kongress. The Futures Congress.
Okay.
It is an anecdote in how future encounters and congresses and whatever could be like. And you must see he wrote this thing maybe 80 years ago.
Okay. So basically, my response is until we understand how to come together effectively, then all these efforts seem to be futile. Very few of them have this magical, oh, I'm a Libra, you're a Virgo, we're going to match, and these things go swimmingly. Very few interactions go like that.
But you see, this is my four futures approach. It is this including crediting and acknowledgement and encouragement of our magic round table. And then with the 21st century Agora, with this structured dialogic design to go with stakeholders into going to priorities and interlinkages and win-win-win situations. We are just pushing for next year this agora of 70 years now, I think, a problematic to really go with Ashby and Jansch and Özbekan and Christakis into going to other modes of really deliberating and having real encounters and not bullshitters and lobbyists trying to hinder more than they are of any value.
Okay, may I respond to that? Okay, I'll take silence as a yes. Jack, one of the really fascinating things I'm finding is the more I delve into the world of investing and what it takes to be a successful investor slash trader slash whatever you want to be, the more I understand that the same dynamics apply. And by that, I mean, if you're an emotional person, if you're a reactive person, if you have a tendency towards assumptions, a tendency towards beliefs and not facts, that person will be a horrible trader, horrible investor. So I'm finding that, there couldn't be two more disparate realms of activity. But at the core, if one quote unquote wants to succeed, the same personal attributes and characteristics will determine success. Whether you can be placid, whether you can be calm, serene, clear, unemotional, fact-based, objective, listening well, looking at all the data, looking at patterns. Those are fundamental skills, I think, that are necessary in almost every endeavor. And the two that I've been looking at, collaborology a lot, but now recently, the market. And I suspect that is going to be true for other applications as well. So that's a big closing of a loop that I've been doing recently. Over.
You nailed it. I think one of the best books you can read on trading is called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. And he was the leader of the Fidelity Magellan Fund, which was the runaway hugest fund ever. What he said is, you don't watch the tickers and look at all of the excitement that's going on. Rather, you spend the time getting the ticker's story. You literally go and kick the wheels and lean on the bumper and talk to the managers and the people. And then you can buy in. And if the story changes, you get out. And he gives one example, a simple example. He bought but Fidelity is in Boston, and he lived out I-128 or whatever it is. So he had to commute in, and he would always stop at Dunkin' Donuts on his way into work. And he noticed that there was a shitload of people in Dunkin' Donuts, and all they were selling was donuts. So he goes back to work and he starts doing his research on Dunkin' Donuts, and he buys it. And all of a sudden it took off, and it went nuts. And one day he walks in there and there was a new sign that said, "We're going to sell hamburgers." And on that day he dumped it. And uh, the point is that he is a calm, researchy trader rather than a you know an enthusiastic speculator that looks at a ticker and says, "Oh shit, I like that."
Mhm.
Now I'm in a stock, you know this, of a electric vertical takeoff and landing taxi,
Mhm.
and I didn't actually have to go and visit the factory and tap on it. I understood the technology and I'd been following them for a long time, and I knew the need. I understood the need. So I'm pretty happy with that. But if you do the same thing with futures, if you understand the story of the ticker, then it doesn't matter which instrument you buy, options or futures or the ticker itself.
Yeah.
Um, you're doing right.
Yeah.
And the
Well, getting
very
back to
very
tides.
famous,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
huh?
No, I was interrupting you. Go ahead.
A very famous stock trader, historical track stock trader, said, um, "Your best trades are made when you're just sitting on your butt doing nothing." And you also have to look at Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway was basically in the same mold as Peter Lynch. Totally understand the fundamentals of the company before you buy. And Berkshire's point was, don't buy anything you can't understand yourself. So it took him a long time before he got into Apple. He didn't understand high tech. And then he was playing bridge with Bill Gates, and Bill Gates said, if you think about it, railroads are going to be the future of transporting um, commodities, because the the carbon footprint per mile per ton of a railroad is so much better than trucks. And so on that day, Berkshire went out and bought a shitload of I forgot which which railroad, and it caused it to do what's called gap up. It just took off. And it was this new realization that railroads are actually going to be a part of the salvation of humankind. And whether we can get them off diesel and onto electricity is another story. But the point is that if you do your deep thinking rather than just grab what's hot, yeah, you're going to be a good trader. And those are the same people that are good conversationalists.
If you talk
So you
about
nailed it.
railroads, today, the interesting aspect of railroads is happening in China, not in the US.
Yeah, no, China is going all high-speed rail, and we're not. We're stupid. California tried to got started a high-speed rail from Sacramento to Los Angeles,
For
and then
30
all
years
manner
now.
of, yeah, for years now, and all manner of politics got in the middle of it, and and destroyed it. And it may actually never happen, even though they've built a big chunk of it.
I don't think it'll happen, Jack, because we as a society value individual rights
That
over the
that
social
is
good.
that is in fact a truism. You know, um, I rode I rode the high speed train from Tokyo to Kyoto to
Osaka?
no, Kyoto, and unfortunately, on the day we rode it, um, it was snowing up ahead, so they had clamped it down to 80 miles an hour instead of the 150 that it was supposed to go. But it was still just an amazing ride.
Mhm. I ran across a stat yesterday, Jack, that the Shinkansen, the bullet train that you rode, in 60 years of operation, carrying 10 billion passengers in that span, has never once had a fatal accident.
That
Not
that
one single
that
time.
does that doesn't surprise me. And here's another thing I want to point out about it, which is I think fucking brilliant. Um, the train has two heads, so that the when it gets to Tokyo, the driver just walks to the other end of the train and gets back in another another leading edge of it.
Mhm.
And what happens is that the people that work the train inside come along and grab the seats and pivot them, turn them
Yep.
right on a middle axis, so
Yep.
they now face the other direction. And if you have a group of people, they will pivot it back, and now you can face each other.
That's right.
It's like they really thought it through.
But if you're a true capitalist, that would be unnecessary cost.
Well, you know that, and I know that. But I once bought a Honda 750 four cylinder motorcycle, and just the gas cap on the tank looked like they had a whole fleet of engineers just thinking through how to make the little button that pops it open work. It was just so marvelously well engineered.
Well, you see,
Uh-oh.
oh,
We're
can you hear
getting
Uh-oh.
me?
feedback.
Well, I'm a fan of transportation, and so
Hey,
I
Heiner,
will.
can you turn off one of
Sure.
your speakers or microphones?
Yeah, let me see what I can do best. Uh, is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, I'm very much into traffic and town planning, so I really had to go to Japan and see Tokyo, Nagoya, and Tokyo to Aizu for the World Exhibition, and how they manage the traffic. We have the problem when it is very fast and high density. Density is the key term for me in town planning and traffic issues. Uh, that they really can manage with different directions of how people enter and leave, that they have a frequency. And I also saw it towards Kyoto. It is a real marvel what they have done. And I just wanted to blunt show that I've been also there. But we have to look what they're doing now when there is a population problem and no young generation anymore and only elders.
Yep.
So I am very enthusiastically following you, and I think the density issues in the flat and in the deep, this is what is keeping me up at night.
Okay, let me ask a question which I don't know the answer to. Can I? There are countries like Japan that are losing babies, or rather, they're not producing as many babies as before. They don't have a domestic baby supply the way the Republicans have tried to create. But is there the scenario where androids, like the one Tesla is trying to produce, can fill that gap? I'm not talking whether it's good or bad. I'm just talking, is it likely? Is it possible? Is it going to happen? Over.
Here in the colonies, as you said earlier, Sam, we're rugged individualists. I mean, I have been to towns personally in recent years where they still ride horses. They don't have cars. Um, we, few of us will ride a bus or a train because we prefer our passenger car and our privacy and turn up the radio and don't have to listen to other people and blah, blah, blah. And we live in single family dwellings rather than in the beehives that you see elsewhere around the world. if they could make the beehive such that you cannot hear the neighbors shouting at each other and you don't have to listen to somebody else's music, then it becomes reasonable. And the Moshe Safdie did that in Montreal during the Expo '67. He built a town out of concrete blocks that just piled on top of each other, but they were all angled and in different directions. So you had complete privacy. We don't do that here in the colonies. We don't do that. Um, and we probably never will.
So I get the point, but I don't think that addresses the question about androids and population issues. Does it?
Well, okay, so we know that Japan is really heavy into building robots that can tend to the elderly. Um, and we're probably going to be doing that here too. We know that Koreans just stopped making babies, and we know that China stopped making babies, and that now the government is doing everything in its power to get couples to make babies, and doesn't seem to be working. Um, I don't have an answer to your question.
Well, separate from the causality issue of not producing babies, what about the possible scenario where androids fill that gap? Was my question.
Well, the androids already do fill the gap in some places.
Right. So if they're going to, and if they already are, and on the way towards doing so, do we need to have such a gloomy prognosis on countries like Japan?
Well, so I don't know what gloomy prognosis means. I'll give you an example. Amazon recently fired something between 12,000 and
Yeah,
30,000
yeah,
people.
tens of
Why?
thousands of people
Yeah, tens of thousands of people. Why? Because LLMs replaced them.
and
Okay.
robots.
And robots. At what point do we just stop buying there simply because we do not want to talk to a robot?
On November 25th.
Good choice. By
There's
the
a
way,
week-long suggested boycott, of all the big name capitalist retailers. I mean,
yeah,
it's symbolic, but it's a start.
it is. By the way, I put it's Heiner. The book you talked about is in English is called the Futurological Congress, and it's for sale on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle if you want for $9.
Jack,
Well,
I'm
I have it in German since 30 years. I'm
Well,
happy.
okay,
I'm happy that you can find it in English.
yeah, it was translated to English, so
Jack, would you be kind enough to put that in the chat? Because right now I'm doing my dishes.
it's in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm not looking at the chat right now.
Well, when you do look at the chat, I gave you a Goodreads link to it, and I
Very
gave
good.
you an Amazon link.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't know what to make of all these, dire predictions about societies going down because of lack of baby production. Because I think baby production used to be the only way the economy could be sustained, but we all know that things are afoot on that assumption.
Yeah, and if you fire tens of thousands of people, that means you have tens of thousands of people who can't buy the groceries they bought and can't go to the movies they went to and can't
Yep.
blah blah blah, including buy stuff from Amazon.
Sure.
So so it's one of those feedback loops that, in my opinion, can't end well.
Of course not, because the feedback will not go to any of these big companies to whom that particular piece of feedback is irrelevant and valueless. They have no consequence if their workers end up on some welfare program, right? Because
That's
they
true.
don't get hurt. They don't get hurt, so
The
they
f-
don't care
the
about it.
feed the feedback does go to the stockholders.
That's very indirect.
Very indirect, but it gets there.
And most of the stockholders are just as capitalist as the companies themselves.
Well, that's the point.
They
My
don't care about social. Sorry, go ahead.
my concern would be we discussed the rebound effect with Professor Rademacher in Collaborology, and I always said there should be also a negative rebound effect, that it swings in the other direction.
Hey, let's welcome Kayla.
Hey.
Hey, Jack and Heiner were on here before I was, but we've ranged across a number of things. We've touched on sustainability, energy production, mutual funds, sorry, investment funds, most recently androids, and the lack of babies. Now, I'm not going to connect all those dots, but I'll leave it to Heiner and Jack to connect those dots.
Magandang umaga.
What did you
Was that
say,
Tagalog?
Jack?
Was that Tagalog?
Magandang umaga.
I have no idea what you just said.
It's Tagalog.
Yeah, it must be either the pronunciation or I don't speak Tagalog.
Well, it technically is good morning.
Oh, maganda. Magandang umaga.
Okay, so you say it a different way than I was taught it, but yeah.
Yeah, whoever taught it to you was wrong.
Well, no, I I
Lost in
was there
translation.
5 times, and that's how we said it. The other one is mabuhay.
Okay, mabuhay is great, but the first one, if they were Filipino, that's very shameful.
Well, there you go, Kayla. You've been told.
So it's actually, what did you say? Umaga.
Magandang umaga. So you have to, uh, you have to kind of distort your mouth. I don't know how to say it. It's kind of like learning French. They're just like
Yeah.
utilizing muscles in your mouth that would allow you to speak in any type of foreign language. I'm pretty sure Heiner knows, you have to just kind of distort your mouth in a certain way.
Yeah, I'm totally aware of that. Yes.
Because a lot of people from the
That's
United States, they very like I feel like sometimes it's difficult for certain people to grasp that concept of kind of distorting your mouth in a way, utilizing muscles to make that pronunciation. So magandang umaga. So you have to kind of swallow certain things too. And if you can see the words, there are certain words and consonants that make certain sounds different ways in
yep,
Tagalog.
yep.
Yeah, try saying a German umlaut. That's difficult for me.
Yeah, the German umlaut was a bitch for me.
Well,
Is
for me, it is much worse. I like the umlaute, but I don't like that you use our vowels and pronounce them totally differently. The A is the E, and the E is the A, and
That's
I
right.
mean, this is really horrible pronunciation if you are not
E,
raised
O,
as a
U.
baby with the other tongue.
Yep.
There's two ways to speak French. Well, two ways I knew how to speak French. There's the French from France and Paris, and then there's also the French from Tahiti. And the hilarious part about it is I have a friend who is from France, and I forgot what area, what region in France. She actually is a French teacher. But when I send her videos, the funny videos from somebody from Tahiti, she cannot understand them. She's like, I don't understand
The same can be said for Mali in French.
What?
Mali is French West Africa, was French West Africa.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
And so they have three languages. They have Arabic because the Muslims moved in, and they have their own native uh, languages, Bambara and a whole bunch of others, and then they have French. And to a native French speaker, they're very difficult to follow.
Yeah.
Can I raise my hand and expose more of my stupidity and ignorance and ask a
Uh,
question?
do it.
You're good at that.
Recently, the big Z, Zoram Namdani, got elected mayor of New York. And the more that's been reported about his family, the more they seem to have some roots in Uganda. And so Uganda seems to have had some prominence because I noticed that one of our past participants, uh, what was it? Jaswinder also came from Uganda. And I had just been saying to myself, I know almost nothing about Uganda other than 30, 40, 50 years ago, Idi Amin was a chaotic ruler. But other than that, I know very little about the country. So how did Uganda become this place where people in a certain diaspora went there and then have managed to represent so well that country? I'm exposing my ignorance here and I'm asking a question. Over.
Well, the fact that he was born in Uganda, but he didn't stay there. He was educated elsewhere and then came to the US.
Still, his family went there, right? Part of his family from India went to Uganda, just like part
Yeah.
of Jaswinder's family from India went to Uganda.
Yes.
And he's not the only one in his family, right? I think there's others in his family that also have roots in Uganda. I only see these very short articles. So I'm just saying I got to find out more about Uganda. And there's probably a whole lot more I need to find out about other countries in Africa because, look, the Western countries had their one or two or three, four, centuries. US has had its, couple of centuries. Asia's going to have its centuries, and then Africa is going to come up to prominence. Now, I'm probably not going to be around when that happens, but still, the direction is going to head in that direction after Asia has some prominence, and it's starting to happen. Over.
So Kenya is another African nation that has basically sent us a lot of people.
Yeah.
One of them uh, was a professor at Stanford whom I met at Engelbart's house. And he was a very interesting fellow. And Engelbart told me once that he thought of this guy as the son he didn't have. They just really got on well together.
Wait, Engelbart did have a son. Sorry.
Well, that's not how he told it to me. I only knew of the three daughters.
No, he has a son.
Who's the son?
He didn't speak about him very much because he was not as successful as the daughters. Evidently had some personal problems. Always needed help.
Well, when Engelbart started hanging out with that lady that he finally married, I got a phone call from one of the daughters, and it wasn't Christina. I forgot who it was.
Gerda?
And it may have been Gerda. And she said, what we're worried about is, will she take care of him when he gets sick?
Oh, come on. She took care of him way better than the daughters did.
Well, the fact is that the daughters came to him to her, to the wife. What I
Karen,
forgot her name, Karen,
his second wife, Karen.
and said, we want to thank you for taking such good care of our father.
Now, when did that happen? Because I don't recall
Af-
that.
no, he she told Linda and me that when we were at his wake.
Wait, I was at his wake. I didn't
You
hear
were at
that
his wake
story.
too, but she probably didn't tell you that.
Because they certainly made her and Doug's life miserable when he was still
They
alive.
did. They did.
Yeah, that's,
Even
I think
even though
that's,
she had signed a prenup that you know it, nothing he had was hers. Blah blah blah.
I
That
think that
wasn't
sounds
enough
hollow
for
to
them.
me. That sounds quite hollow to me, just on this telling.
What sounds hollow?
That they came and, thanked her. I'm sure they did that, okay, but I'm not sure how sincere that was.
Well, I couldn't speak to it. I wasn't there, but
Yeah. Because if they really were, they could have seen much earlier how she was taking care of Doug. They didn't have to wait till Doug died.
yeah,
Anyway, sorry.
Can we go back to Africa and Nairobi?
Yes.
We
Nairobi.
organized with the World Future Studies Federation 95 with Bishop Tutu, Africa Beyond Poverty. And we arrived, and it was an absolute nightmare with revolution and students and university, whatever turmoil. But the main thing was there was an African called Odera Uruka. His son is called Peter, and he was showing books and writing books. He was the author of sagacious knowledge, traditional knowledge. So all this is unpublished. Futures and Economy was published, but Futures and Ethics and all the other sections were not printed, were not made public. But I really felt, as Bishop Tutu was our big hero there, that it is a nightmare, and we should look in our searches with Google or whatever, with AI, into which has only very few hits, which is not mainstay, which will never make it into Wikipedia. But I learned that Google is developing strategies on the terms which are less and less and less used and are not mainstream, which are unique, but may show ingenuity and creativity to help us make a difference. So totally the absolute opposite to how we run nowadays search.
Hey, can you give an example, Heiner?
Well, I only learned it in a discussion with advanced AI that terms and issues which will never make it into Wikipedia, which through flame wars and deletion, whatever troops, will not allow a creative new idea which is just in the bakery, to hit the global consensus to be appreciated. So we have a variety and speciality as a key criterion, and not a quantitative approach. Nearly everybody likes it. So I cannot give you an example. I have not implemented it, but I feel it is very important to look for seeds of change and things which are not there yet in the thinking of futures.
Well, I'll take it as a favorable indicator, but until there's an example, I'll just treat it as good marketing. And I would also be careful with Google. Google has clearly got a lot of smart people. They've implemented a lot of smart products and technologies, but they're also very quick to cancel their products, which people have come to rely on. And that causes me not to trust Google in a certain way. So this is undoubtedly, this is part of their experimentation. Let's hope it takes hold, that it really provides benefit and has legs.
Speaking of Bishop Tutu, there was a Taiwanese uh, girl who worked for Cisco Systems in the Bay Area. Uh, her actual name was Tang Wei, but she went by Joy Tang. But Cisco sent her. She was in their marketing. They sent her to Africa, and she ended up in an elevator at a conference with Bishop Tutu and John Perry Barlow, and became friends with both of them. Now, what happened is that she discovered orphanages for the children of HIV deceased parents, and she basically became a strong advocate for them, and so she appealed to Cisco to cut her salary in half so she could work part-time for the orphanages. And they eventually fired her. And uh, so she came back to the US, and that was about the time I met her. And she um, had bought an apartment and so forth. She ended up moving back to Taiwan to be with her parents and married somebody I knew. I forgot his name.
Was
Um,
it, was she close to a guy named Arnie Garvey? Or am I
I
thinking of
don't
a
remember
different?
that name. Fundamentally, the way she made the rent payments was she had a two-bedroom apartment, so she would rent one bedroom out, and that helped her make the rent. Um, but she was trying to build a foundation. She did go back to Africa, and she built a foundation that was all about that. And that's where I began to learn that there was something called Federation of Foundations. And the reason is because she had to compete at the United Nations with the likes of Monsanto. Monsanto carries a lot more weight because it has a lot more money. But I told her if she could federate with a lot of other foundations and grow a louder voice, maybe the UN would start listening. Never actually happened, but that's where I began to see the reality of a federation of small voices.
Can you find the name and send it to me? Because at that time we tried to do with Cisco the Global Learn Day, and this was a very, very critical time. And knowing everything about terminator seeds and all the things we did with whistleblowers in Toronto on the early days of Monsanto, it looks like it was a treasure and a pleasure to be with you today. But I will not be really available any longer, but I will listen.
Thanks, Heiner.
Yeah, and I will not be here tomorrow. It's I do not know that I can come up with resurrect the name of her foundation or what she did, but that's all. Oh,
You see, it's so important for me because we tried with the European Foundation Centers and the foundations in the various European countries to really bridge funding schemes between first world and second world foundations. Because, like academies, they do a lot, but in sweet isolation, and nobody knows about each other. But how to connect, going to the win-win strategies of common frames of references. This thing was a very interesting point of departure. And about this sagacious knowledge and Africa, I will send you this Odera Uruka and his sagacious knowledge, how to come to embodied living knowledge, which has roots and wings. Anyway.
Hey, Heiner, before you go, for future conversation, you don't have to do it now, but I just want to park a topic for you, which is that to me, it is sad. In fact, it might even make me angry that Africa has not reached prominence primarily because it has been so oppressed. And one of those means of oppression has been currency exchange rates. You know, their currencies are so devalued and so exploitative from the standpoint of, let's say, the more established, Western countries, that it's a means for them to basically steal Africa resources, exploit them, and make the Western countries, rich and keep the African peoples poor. And that has been going on for centuries. And I just want to park that as a conversation topic for the future. Over.
It's very dear to me. I was UNEP with headquarters in Nairobi.
Heiner, I know you got to go, okay? Because
so anyway,
if we go into this,
park it somewhere and tell me where the key is in which parking house.
I'll just mention it from time to time in this forum when there is a lull in the conversation.
so Sam, something that Heiner said stirred this thought. There was a realization of mine about collaborology, and it was this. When I came out of the mountains in the Sierra foothills and started working in high tech, I was a Java programmer at a basically a B-level bank. It was called the Money Store. They made their money in bicycle loans and auto loans and student loans. They were not a high class bank, and they were run by a guy who was fundamentally constantly under the umbrella of drugs. Um, but one of the things that happened to me was the database administrator called me and said, "I don't want you messing with my database." And another department didn't want to talk to me because I might steal their secrets. And then when I moved to SRI, the database administrator came into my office and said, "How can I help you?" And other departments would ask me to come over and talk to them about what I'm doing. Now, what was the difference? The difference was that these individual corporations, be they a bank or a aerospace or a whatever, um, departments don't naturally collaborate. Whereas at SRI, everybody was aimed at one thing, and that was keeping the funding going, whatever it took. And it was my perception was is that we all work, we all basically work for 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 the chief. And then the chief, when he would come around, he would actually he came over to Engelbart's party once, and he looked at me and he says, "I understand we just hired you. Adam told me." And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you know who you actually work for?" And I said, "Well, the simple answer is I work for you, but that's not the answer. I work for the taxpayers because that's where you get your money." And he says, "That's the right answer."
That message is lost in translation with so many companies. So many. Because they'll stop. They won't mention taxpayers, but they will mention their shareholders. And to most companies, that's one and the same, sadly.
Yeah, if you're working for the shareholders, but if you're the guy driving rivets on a Boeing 747, you don't give a shit about the shareholders. You only
By
care
design.
about what the
By
by
design.
by by what the union says you're going to get for your wages.
Mhm.
Whereas we at SRI had this ethic that we wanted to make the best value for our customer. And our customer wasn't just DARPA, it wasn't just DOE or any of those. It was, in fact, the taxpayers.
So another connection I'd like to make is that this notion of quality has gotten bastardized so much in society. If you take a look at technology and products from 40, 50, 60 years ago, from Japan, from Sweden, from other countries, those products were built to last. In fact, there were a number of American companies that built good products that were built to last. Okay. But then sooner or later, some bean counters or some management team decided that, well, to build for, let's say, 50-year product life is a bit more expensive than to build for a 5-year product life. And oh, by the way, if the product lives only 5 years, in 5 years, they're going to come back and buy another one. So, almost by design, capitalism says, let's compromise on quality, let's maximize for income, and screw the benefit to society. And that's happened everywhere. So you get companies that will cut corners on parts, plastic versus metal, all kinds of ways that this always gets compromised to save a few cents here, a few dollars there, a few pennies there, and then, drive down the cost, but at the cost of product life and product quality, and thereby the consumer's experience with that product. And they'll live with enough grumbling because as long as the grumbling isn't enough to threaten their growth in product sales, they don't mind the grumbling. They can throw cheap customer service people at it, and that solves their problem. Which is now in stark contrast to what Sweden is doing, which is no product gets thrown away. You have to fix everything. And I think that's something that we should have realized from at least 70, 80, 100 years ago. And I believe Sweden is the first country to have that policy. Or first of the modern countries to have that policy. I'm sure villagers a long time ago managed to find their way around sustainability a lot better than we're demonstrating. So I think an issue of quality has to do with experience of the consumer. And that gets compromised when that doesn't show up on the bottom line of these big companies. Only the capital cost, the production cost, the efficiency rates, failure modes, et cetera, but it's not customer experience. And that's the way the system is designed. Sadly, over.
So, from the theory of chaos, it's fun to speculate that the day is coming, totally unforeseen, when all of society wakes up and says, "We messed up.
That won't
Let's
happen,
get
Nick.
let's get together." Well, the driver of it will be climate change driven catastrophes. We thought World War II was the one that it would end all wars, but it didn't. It was immediately followed by the Korean War, then the Vietnam War, and then the Afghan War, and the blah blah blah. It didn't end the wars
Because
because we
wars are
don't learn.
profitable. Wars are
Wars are
profitable.
profitable. It was our President Eisenhower that warned against that.
Yep. See, when you say society wakes up, all of society will wake up. I think at most 3 to maybe 8 or 9% of society will wake up. And we're on the way towards that. But we're never going to hit 100%. Just look at the
Well,
maggots,
look,
There's too many of them.
yes, I think we've got your 3 to 10%. We've got that already, but um, we're still, yeah. But I just, first of all, here's how I look at it. We kind of are a nation that lives on insurance companies. We have insurance for our driving, we have insurance for our cars, we have insurance for our homes, and insurance for blah 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 blah, everything we do. And the California fires have caused a lot of insurance companies to walk away from California. Gone. Oof. Which means that many people in California who cannot get insurance on their home have to go to the state, to the final insurer of record, and that's really expensive. And so what are the chances that will bankrupt the state eventually? And if you project that out to the floods and the hurricanes and all of the rest of the disasters across the country, eventually the insurance companies will be unable to satisfy their stockholders.
Well, let me ask you a
That's
couple questions about that. Are they canceling policies and just leaving, or are they letting policies expire? If
they're
they're
letting them
letting
expire.
policies, okay,
In other words, what
then
they're saying is, don't come back to us, and in fact, don't come to us if you want a new policy. We're not
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. Well, from a macro standpoint, you know what insurance companies replaced, sadly, in my view? Insurance companies replaced neighbors.
They
We used to be
replaced
able to,
what?
neighbors. We used to be able to
Neighbors. Yeah, no,
associate
you're
with our
right.
neighbors, get
Yep, yep, yep,
support.
yep.
Somebody needed soap, I give them soap. Somebody needed, some sugar, I give them sugar. If I needed a wrench, I go borrow a wrench, that kind of neighbor. So that kind of neighbor could actually look out for themselves and the members within it. But in this so-called, individualistic, worship myself and I'm out for everything I can get and screw my neighbors, screw my fellow citizen, that has gone away. So
Yep.
now you don't have neighbors. And in fact, you don't even have multi-generational families to rely on for support.
In
So what
in
steps
in
in?
the
Yeah,
in
go
the
ahead.
ancient New England, in the earliest days of this country, if a young couple got married, what happened is all the neighbors would come over and build them a barn.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
That's
how
why the
it worked.
GCC is called barn raising.
Right. That's exactly the point. Barn raising is the right metaphor.
Yeah.
Ta-ta.
I'm away from my screen. Did Kayla just depart or did Heiner just depart? Or did you just depart?
Well, maybe we scared her away. I don't know.
Oh, Kayla? Oh, okay. Yeah, she didn't get a word in edgewise today, hardly, other than
No, but
Tagalog.
she corrected my Tagalog
Yeah.
and said she didn't know Tagalog.
Well, she knew enough to actually explain her pronunciation of it.
Well, because she has her parents to deal with, and so there's got to be some.
Okay,
I'm
I say goodbye and I see that we are on the same page. My key terms recently are entitlement and convenience. And I mentioned that before. Maybe we also have another session about that. For
convenience
who
and
will do
entitlement. Okay.
convenience, and if it's only good to be lazy and you have a nice product. Anyway, good night and good luck.
Later, Heiner.
And I'm going to drop off because it's time to make breakfast.
Okay, Jack. I'm gonna have a bite to eat myself, and I'm gonna try and see if I can deal with my dogs here.
And we'll not be
Okay.
here tomorrow.
Okay, Jack. Have a good
See
day.
you.
Have a good week. See you next time.
Did you capture the links before you shut down?
Since I record, yes, they automatically get saved.
All right. See
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.